Columbus and the Indians of the Americas by Nico Uribe. Most scientists agree that humans began arriving in the Americas between 13,000 and 15,000 years ago. They were Southeast Asians who expanded to the Americas, crossing the Bering Strait. The Bering Strait is the narrowest point between Asia and America, more exactly between Russia and Alaska. According to the Bering theory, the first Americans arrived from Asia by crossing the Bering Strait, when the extreme low temperatures approximately 15,000 years ago lowered sea levels and created a 55-mile-long land bridge that connected Asia and America. When temperatures changed, rising sea waters submerged the bridge, and humanity was divided in two worlds that ignored each other for thousands of years, to get officially reunited a little more than 500 years ago with Columbus's arrival to the Americas. Columbus arrived at the Americas in 1492, only about 500 years ago. Scientific evidence tells that when he stepped ashore, millions of people were already living there. Columbus was a skilled sailor and navigator. When he decided to sail west across the Atlantic instead of around the large African continent, his logic was right, but his math was faulty. He argued incorrectly that the circumference of the Earth was much smaller than his peers believed. Columbus was determined to find a route west from Europe to Asia. There was gold in Asia, and Spain wanted gold, which was becoming a new mark of wealth, more useful than land because it could buy anything. Columbus persuaded the king and queen of Spain to finance an expedition to these lands. It is a myth that Columbus wanted to prove the world was not flat. The theory that the earth was flat had been discarded by Columbus' time. However, his first journey proved that the earth was much larger than people believed.
Rise, come forward. I should not even be listening to you since my council has said no. They believe the ocean is uncrossable, Senor Columbus.
In return for bringing back gold and spices, the king and queen of Spain promised Columbus 10% of the profits, governorship over newfound lands, and fame that would come with a new title, Admiral of the Ocean Sea. August 3rd, 1492, Columbus and his crew set sail from Spain in 3 ships, La Niña, La Pinta, and La Santa Maria. On October 12th, the ships made landfall, not in Asia as Columbus had thought, but on the Caribbean islands. He discovered, without knowing, a new continent, but many have pointed out over the years that for something to be discovered, it must be lost, and the millions of people already living in the New World most likely didn't need to be discovered. Columbus and his crew would have never made it to Asia, which was thousands of miles further away than he calculated, imagining a smaller world. But he was lucky. 1/4 of the way there, he came upon an unknown land that lay between Europe and Asia, the Americas, more exactly the Bahama Islands. According to the American historian and author Howard Zinn, when Columbus arrived in the Bahamas, the Arawak Indians, men and women, naked, tawny, and full of wonder, emerged from their villages to get a closer look at the arriving strangers. When Columbus and his sailors arrived, carrying swords and speaking oddly, the Arawaks ran to greet them, brought them food, water, and gifts.
salvajen. Bajaga. Tamam kırım bakın. 이걸 하나만 배요. 하나만 배요. 많이 가와지. 하나가 그러네.
Columbus wrote in his journal about the Indians. They brought us parrots and balls of cotton, and spears and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawksbells. They willingly traded everything they owned. Trends. According to the historian Howard Zinn, European observers would say again and again that the Indians were remarkable for their hospitality and their belief in sharing. These traits and characteristics did not stand out in Europe by the time of the Renaissance, dominated as it was by the religion of popes, the government of kings, and the frenzy for money. Arawaks lived in villages and had developed agriculture of corn, yams, and cassava. They would spin and weave, but they had no horses or work animals. They had no iron, but they wore gold ornaments on their ears and chests, and this was to have enormous consequences for them. The information that Columbus wanted the most was, where's the gold? Columbus needed to bring back to Spain gold and spices, as agreed. He had persuaded the king and queen of Spain to finance his expedition, promising bringing back gold for the prosperity of Spain and, of course, for his own wealth and future. Ethics.
You. Utapan. Utapan. Columbus. 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 Where did you find this?
Different perspectives. With the mission of obtaining gold and a difficult tropical environment, Columbus knew he needed guidance from the Indians, and according to the historian Howard Zinn, he started taking all of them as prisoners because he insisted that they guide him to the source of the gold. In contrast, author Christopher Minster says that he took slaves only from the tribes who fought him, but seemed to have dealt relatively fairly with the tribes that befriended him. Columbus sailed to what is now Cuba, and then to Hispaniola, the island that today consists of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, looking for gold fields. On Hispaniola, he built the first fort and went back to Spain with the collected gold and Indians to prove his success.
That's not the purest metal I've ever seen. Is there more?
We are more than gratified, Cristobal.
The success of his first trip, the King and Queen of Spain financed a second and much larger expedition, with 17 ships and more than 1,200 men. The aim was clear: slaves and gold. This new expedition opened the doors for awful diseases, such as smallpox, to which men and women of the New World had no defenses, and millions died. It also opened the doors for the conquistadors, who later looted the mighty Aztec and Inca empires, and slaughtered natives by the thousands. Slaves died in captivity. Columbus was desperate to pay back dividends to those who had invested in his expeditions, so he ordered all persons 14 or older to collect a certain quantity of gold every month. But this became an impossible task for them, and they were ferociously punished. Contribution. Arawaks faced Spaniards, and many were killed, but they had armor, muskets, swords, and horses, and the Indians could not defeat them. Arawaks in desperation began mass suicides with cassava poison. In 2 years, half of the Indians in Haiti were dead. It was an awful, awful time full of blood, destruction, and sadness. Unfortunately, the Spaniards who followed Columbus brought more hard work and abuse to the Indians, who worked at a ferocious pace and continued dying by the thousands. From Columbus's death in 1506, Columbus's life story has undergone many revisions. He has been pointed as a villain by many indigenous groups and almost a saint by others. Many historians and books let you conclude that he was neither a monster or a saint. At the end, he was simply a skilled sailor and navigator who was also an opportunist and product of his own time who took advantage of the discovery. Unfortunately, Columbus's arrival to the Americas brought a lot of misfortune to the Indians in their own land. Parallel. The conquest and colonization of North America and Latin America were very different. In North America, settlers came to stay and build communities. In Latin America, most conquistadors came to obtain gold and wealth to take away. This might explain why countries in Latin America have taken longer in becoming developed.